On today's show, I show you how to set up your printer and get it ready for its first print. Stay tuned. Hey, welcome to the first layer. If we haven't met before, my name is Richard Cleveland. Welcome to the show. We are talking about 3D printers and 3D printing as we go through the hobby. We're going to talk about everything from start to finish. If you missed last week's show, we talked about buying your first 3D printer. And today, now that you've got your first 3D printer, we're going to show you how to calibrate it. And we are going to show you how to level the bed so that you can get a successful first print out of your 3D printer. So let's get started. We've got the Anycubic i3 Mega here today. This is the one we're going to show for demonstration purposes. We've got it all plugged in, ready to go. We've got no filament loaded into it. So let's get started. One of the things that I like to do when I'm setting up my printer, and I like to make sure that everything is level to one another and square to one another. So once I've put the printer together, in this case with the iMega or i3 Mega, all you need to do is just put in 4 screws on either side, and this is attached to the base and you're all set to go. I'm going to show you a wide shot of this printer in just a few minutes. But first things first is you want to make sure that your X axis is level to your Y axis and also parallel to your, parallel to your Z-axis, which are these rods and these lead screws right here. So let's get started. I'm going to first show you the, let me see if I can get around here. Let's go to the interface. Okay, so it's a very simple menu system. On the Anycubic i3 Mega, it's a touch screen. All of your buttons are right here in front of you. You can home, you can use your filaments, or you can change your filament, pardon me. Let's go back one screen. This is the screen that you're going to be treated with when you first turn on the printer. There's 3 basic buttons. There's a print button, there is a setup button, and there is your tools button. Now let's quickly explore the setup button here. In there you can change the temperature, turn your motors off, you can find out the status of your machine, speed of your machine, and language. We'll just go back one menu and let's go into the tools really quickly. There we are. And in the tools you can home all your axes, you can move your axes, you can preheat the machine, you can cool down the machine, change your filament, level the bed, and then there is a more button. And if we go into that more button, you can see that we can reset it. We can calibrate the touch screen, get some help and some info on the machine. Now this is a machine that we've used in the shop quite a bit. This is a great machine. It's a workhorse. I love using it. And for all intent and purposes, it will print just about whatever you want it to print. It is not an enclosed machine, however. It is an open air machine, so if you are going to be printing higher temperature filaments like ABS, PLA, or not PLA, pardon me, ABS and PETG, you really want to make sure that you're in an enclosure, someplace where there's not a lot of draft and that sort of thing. So on the side of this machine, there's a USB and an SD card slot, and it uses full-size SD cards. So you don't have to worry about, putting in micro SDs like you have to on some other printers. It's wired up really well. It comes flat packed in a box, and it's very simple to put together. So let's get into setting the machine up, okay? So the first thing that I like to do when I am setting up any machine is make sure that my X-axis is parallel and level. So one of the ways that I do that is I use glue sticks, and they're very simple. You can get these at any store. And the reason I use glue sticks is because they are exactly the same size. So let's switch over to the printer, and there we are. Okay, so here's what I like to do is I put the glue stick in the corner on either side. And this is a little high, so we can actually bring this down a little bit. I am going to bring down that axis just a little bit. Maybe a little bit more. Till I'm pretty close to the glue sticks. Okay, I think I'm just about there. I'm going to get a little closer. Now, I think I'm as close as I want to be. I can still move my glue sticks freely. So now, in order to level that out, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the lead screws, and that is this portion right here. It's pretty tough to see. The lead screw in the back right here, you can see my fingers are on it, and I will adjust those till they just touch the top of those glue sticks. First and foremost, it might help if I disabled them. Always remember that you need to disable the motors in the setup before, there we go, motors are now off, before you start to try and move the lead screws. Otherwise, you won't be able to do it. So now they're moving freely, and I can feel that they're just touching on either side. So as soon as I've got them touching, I see there's a little bit of resistance there, a little bit more there. So maybe I got to bring this side up just a hair. Let's see how much. There we go. We can. There's a little bit of resistance and a little bit of resistance here. So that to me is level. So now I can pull those glue sticks out. I've got the bed springs all the way down onto the bottom. They're fully compressed right now. Now I'm going to home the machine. Oh. Why is it not homing? So now we're homing it. And we're going to see we've got a little bit of space to work with here. We're actually quite far away from the glass bed. So now I am going to go back and I am going to disable those one more time because I want to be able to move this gantry, the X and the Y, back and forth manually, but I don't want to move it too fast. And the reason I don't want to move it too fast is because if you do that, if you move the gantry too fast across the axis, it can actually send an electrical charge back to the electronics. And once that happens, you have a possibility of shorting out your electronics. So we don't want to do that. We want to be very careful. We're going to move the bed up just a little bit so that the tip of the nozzle is pretty much in its zero position. Just want to catch that glass there. And we're using glass on this. Normally this bed just has an adhesive top, very similar to Build Tack. So what we're going to do now is grab a piece of paper and we are going to level that bed. And I have a piece of paper right here. So any piece of paper, and we're going to slide that piece of paper underneath that front corner. Now what I like to do when I'm loosening up the bed is I like to do both sides on the front at the same time. So I'll give 3 turns, 3 turns, 3 turns. Check my paper. Checking my paper all the time as I'm doing this. And you're going to do this to all 4 corners. And we're getting closer. Oh, there we go. We got a little bit of drag on that now. And I'm going to loosen up this side a little bit more. And when I go to the back's going to be the same thing. So what we're looking for is just a little bit of drag. Right now you can see that's gripping my paper. So I'm going to back it off a little bit. Back it off a half turn more till I can just start moving that paper. Now I can feel some resistance on that paper, so it might be a little bit too much. So I'm going to loosen it just a little bit more till I can just feel it grab. There we go. I'm just feeling it grab now. So we're going to move this over to the other side, and we're going to do the same thing. Stick our paper in underneath, and we're going to loosen that screw till we just get it to grab. Now it's a little too tight. A little too tight. There we go. That's about what I'm after. I'm going to go back over to this side and check and see. Look, see what happens there? Every time you loosen a screw or a bed leveler, it'll throw others out of whack. So now I have to tighten this one back down a little bit so I can get that paper to move again. A little too tight still. A little too tight. Once we get that tuned up, there we go. I can just feel the very slightest drag on that. Now we're going to come back over here, and we have no drag. So we're going to just get that little bit of drag. All right, so now we're going to move to the back corner, and we're going to go around counterclockwise. I like to do counterclockwise. Not everybody does. And again, we're going to loosen these so that they're equal. See how our paper's doing. And now remember, when we're doing the back, it's going to change the plane of the front as well. So we're going to have to go back and recheck that. Okay, so now we are just going to get that to move ever so slightly. That's about what we want. Let's move over to the other side and see where we're at. Now we've got a lot of room there. So we're going to bring this side up. And again, we're going to do just like we did on the front. As we're going to play with it. There we go. We got a little bit of drag there. We're going to play with it a little bit until we get somewhat equal on both sides. Now we know that that's really tight again. So now we're going to back that off just till we can get that paper moving. There we go. There we go. Ever so slight resistance. Back over here, we know that we've got still a little bit too much slop. So now we've got that little bit of resistance. All we did was give it a little bit of a tighten. So now we're going to check that one more time. And we're doing this cold for the first time. So now we are tight again. So we're going to loosen, or we're going to tighten this one down a little bit. Just so we can get our paper to move. And there it is, just starting to move down. There's still a little bit too much on there. And that's a little too loose. There we go. We got that little bit of drag that I want. And now we're going to go over this side and do this one. This one's a little bit tight too, so we're going to just adjust that. So we've got just an ever so slight bit of drag. And there we go. Check that front again. This one's a little too low now. So we're just going to, and try not to put any weight on your bars or on your bed when you're doing this, because it can throw your results out of whack. Okay, so there we are. And we know that this side, that's good. So now we're going to go to the back. we're going to do this like 3 times, and we know that that's quite tight, so we're just going to tighten that up just a little bit. And this will get us in the ballpark of where we want to be when we're setting up our printer. Okay, so now that we've got it pretty much in the ballpark, this is what I like to call pre-leveling. And we know that this front corner is still a little high, so we're going to put that down a little bit. We can't even get our paper underneath of it. We want to be able to get our paper underneath. There we go. Now we can get our paper underneath. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to heat up the printer. I'm going to preheat for PLA. So I'm just going to preheat that to 200. I like 200. That's sort of my... And we're going to heat up the bed to about 60. There we go. Okay. So now that we've got that, we're going to hit OK. We're going to let the machine heat up a little bit. Once it's heated up, what happens when the machine heats up, what happens is both the nozzle, because it's made from brass, expands, and the aluminum plate that the heater is in expands as well. So once we're done that, then we can re-level the bed, make sure that the bed is, again, perfect as we want it, and then we can start our first print. We can load our filament and start our first print. One thing I want to caution you about, don't load your filament before you do your initial bed leveling. The reason that you don't want to do that is because you don't want any plastic interfering with your bed leveling, and if you do happen to get that, what happens is it can throw your bed leveling out of whack. So you don't want to, you want to make sure that you've got a clean nozzle and that you've got no filament loaded into the machine when you're doing your bed leveling. So this is starting to heat up now. The fans have come on. So this is, while this is heating up, this is going to be a good time to talk about our partner in crime, spool3d.ca. Spool3D, print it right. Spool3D has everything available to you for the 3D printer enthusiast. Everything from printers, filaments, and parts. So if you're looking for anything for your 3D printer, or you want to build a 3D printer, they have everything to build your own 3D printer as well. And they have a great line of printers, Wanhao, Anycubic, Zortrax. We've got a great line of printers down here at spool3d.ca. So print it right, use spool3d.ca, and get your first printer or some filament from spool3d.ca. We're happy to have them aboard and a partner in this show, The First Layer. All right, so we're just about heated up here. We're just about at temperature. I'm just going to give it a quick check. And we are pretty close to temperature. So it's tough for me. I got to look around. So let's get back underneath that front corner. Now we can see. Let me just switch back to that camera. We can see I can't get my paper underneath that front corner. Geez. Well, that tells me something. And this is a good example right here. I don't know how well you guys can see that on the paper, of filament that might be surrounding your hot end. So we are now going to tighten that down a little bit. We're going to get our piece of paper under. We've got ever so slight resistance. Just want a little bit of resistance. That's a little too much. If you hear that snap, means you're too close. If you can pull the paper out and slide it back in with just ever so slight resistance, you're okay. So we're doing good, because the paper has no weight, so it's not going to push down on anything. So let's go over to this side and see how we're doing. This side seems pretty good. We're just going to give it a slight adjustment. And we should be just about the same on the front. Yes, we are. So let's come back this way. Again, don't move that gantry too fast, because if you do, you could wind up, again, sending electrical current back to the board. So let's go back and check the back one here. If I can get my piece of paper in there. And we know, yeah, that's a little tight, but we can get the paper in. So we're just going to give it a little bit of a minor adjustment. There we go. And that one is really loose. So we're going to adjust that one so that we get that little bit of resistance here. And that's what we're looking for right there. Let's come back over here. That's good. The front's good. And that front is good. So now we're ready to set up our printer to receive some filament. So we're going to load our filament. So we're going to load some filament, and then we are going to do a test print. We'll be right back. Okay, so now we're going to load some filament. We've got some red PLA here, and before you load filament, what you want to do is take your little nippers, and you want to just cut that on an angle, just so that you've got about a 45-degree angle on that material. We're going to feed it through our filament holder here. At least we hope we are. This is the tough part, getting this lined up properly. There we go. So we have our filament in the filament holder. We're going to open up our extruder, and we're going to feed that through just till it comes to the end, just till it comes to a stopping point. When we feel it stop, that's where we want to leave it. So what we're going to do now is we are just going to raise up that gantry a little bit by going in, and we're going to raise up the Z-axis, and we'll switch to that camera so you guys can see what's going on. I'm going to raise it 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. Okay, so we've raised it up a little bit, a little goober there on our glass. We'll just get that off. There we go. It's off. We have our filament loaded, and we're ready now to start loading in the filament. So we're going to go back to the front, and you'll see here on the front display that there's an area for loading filament. So in this case, what we wanted to do is load in the filament till we've got some nice material coming out. And we know that it's going good. And there we go. All right. So we're going to stop it now. We've got enough material that's come through there. I'm going to stop, go back to the main menu. And there we are. So we've got our filament. We're just going to take this away because we don't need this anymore. And when we come back, we're going to do our first print. All right, so we have our model loaded, and it's going to be a 20 by 20 calibration cube. We're going to hit print, and the machine is going to heat up to its temperature that it needs to. And once that is done, it's going to start printing. Now we got a little bit of a goober there underneath the print head, so we're just going to take that out with a pair of tweezers. You can see it kind of hanging down there. We're just going to take that off, make sure that we got a nice clean print head. And we see now it's going to home itself, which it does automatically. And then it's going to go to our starting point and start printing what we need it to print. So in this case, we're doing a 20 millimeter by 20 millimeter cube. And what we're looking for is a really good first layer. It looks like it's printing just beautifully now. We're going to let that print, and we will come back and talk about that in just a minute when the cube is all done. So our cube is done, and we are now going to pop it off the build plate here. Well, there we go. Get your scraper underneath of it. We're going to have a look at it, and we see here on the bottom, see if I can come through this way. We can see here on the bottom that it had really good layer adhesion. We got a nice first layer, and we're looking for that first layer. We may have had our bed a little bit hot because it's kind of bubbled out there a little bit. So we have a little bit of an edge on it. So it melted a little bit too much. We have good layer adhesion, and we have a good top layer as well. So this was done at 0.2 millimeters at 10% infill, and this is a 20 by 20 cube. So this little guy tells us a lot about our printer. If we have a look at it, we have a look at the edge detail. We can see, in this case, we can see the layer lines because we're not doing a very fine print. We're just doing a simple print. So having a look at our cube, it looks good. It looks like we're ready to do a much bigger job. So that's all there is to getting your printer working for you. Once you've calibrated it, make sure that everything is level and square to one another, make sure your bed is level, then you are ready to start printing your first print. And I always suggest that we start with something like this. If we can print this, then we should be able to print most other things. We're going to go into greater detail on models that we find on Thingiverse and myminifactory.com as well. So we're going to explore that in later episodes. So stick with us. Hey, listen, if you like this episode, hit that subscribe button down below. Become a member. Hit the little notification bell to let you know when we have brand new episodes up and running on YouTube. We also share this on our Facebook group and through a few other Facebook groups as well. So make sure that you join our group on Facebook. And speaking of YouTube and Facebook, I want to tell you about a contest that we've got going on right now. We are going for 250 subscribers here on YouTube. Once we reach 250 subscribers, what we're going to do is we're going to be giving away a poster from Star Trek, the motion picture, not the motion picture, pardon me, Star Trek by J.J. Abrams, the first movie that he did in the Star Trek franchise, rebooting the Star Trek franchise. It's a beautiful poster. It feels hand painted. There's only so many of them going around. IMAX had them, and I just happen to have a couple of them here, so I'm going to give one of those away to you, as well as you are going to receive Ray right down here in the corner. You're going to receive this Ray bobblehead, and to cap it all off for you, the winner will also receive a $50 gift certificate for spool3d.ca, and you can spend that however you like on the spool3d.ca website. Give them some love. Go check them out at spool3d.ca. They have everything that you need, as I mentioned earlier, and I want to thank them for being our partner in this show. And we're just about ready to wrap it up. So again, do what we did today. Check your printer, make sure that everything's level and square to one another, and make sure that you do your little calibration cube, and then go ahead and start downloading models. And we're going to talk about the quality of models in a later episode as well. On next week's episode, we're going to go a little bit deeper into the software that we use, which you get with your printer. And we may also be unboxing another printer for use right here in the studio. So stick with us, and hope to see you next week here on The First Layer. My name is Richard Cleveland. Thanks again for joining me, and keep printing.